Here we are,
Here we are.
getting ready to jump into something that's probably going to get us in trouble. But that's okay. Probably a topic we'll revisit a lot, probably rehash it out. So we'll jump into it. Church, Christianity, both of us are believers in Jesus, base our religious belief, our character, our life around that. I was raised in church my whole life. Have plenty of family members that have been ministers and everything like that. So I have some pretty hard opinions on it, I guess. But I think one of the conversations that needs to happen is I think a lot of people have questions and they struggle with questions, probably more so about church than they even really do Christianity at this point. Most of the conversations we get into with some of our friends, it's not about how they feel about Jesus or going to their church or their preferred religion or whatever. It's more about the formal organizational structure and how it works out. So both of us go to church. We have a lot of friends that struggle with that or have a lot of opinions about that. So let's just jump into it. Why do you go to church?
Why do I go to church now, or why did I when I...
Both. Great. Good job.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Well, tell me about your church. So like, what was your
Why
average...
deflect? Why would you deflect that question?
Well, what was your...
You're such a politician. Josh is running for office.
No, I'm not. Stop.
Get ready, Marion.
Stop. So I know what my upbringing around church was. So like, what's yours?
Grandpa was a pastor. So he pastored in Galion, Ohio. So I grew up spending a lot of time in church, a small family church. So my parents were heavily involved, the kind of thing where, they helped do the music, they helped do the Sunday school, Grandpa preached, that whole deal. So for people that have grown up in that or grew up in that time frame, it's a very common theme, unlike a lot of people, or unlike some other situations, my family situation was extremely positive. So there were no direct challenges with how I perceived church or what I thought at that point, especially because there's been a generational kind of shift in this previous generation where typically then you had bivocational ministers. So the vast majority of ministers were bivocational. It was rare to have a minister that was strictly a pastor. You had maybe your more mainline denominations that just over time had the funding and stuff like that. But my grandpa was part of a smaller denomination, so he was bivocational. So I was raised in church, and then he passed when I was in middle school, and so then we went on a kind of a family pursuit. I remember at Grandma and my mom and dad, and they went on a family pursuit of trying to find another local church here in Marion for us to be a part of, which they did find, and I think that experience in particular taught me a lot about one of the most common excuses, and that's the people in the church or somebody feeling comfortable in a church, and at the end of the day, we're pretty imperfect serving perfection. So I was able to kind of understand the grace that has to be extended to people. So my ability to adjust to certain things or to hear certain things and work through those, I think, is a little bit different. But I also grew up with it being a pretty central part of my childhood and my life, where you didn't.
No.
Okay, so what was your church upbringing?
There was none. So never went to church. My mom and dad were divorced when I was 5. My dad moved to Columbus. My mom stayed in Portsmouth. I stayed with her all the way through. As long as I can remember, never went to church. But one thing I did have is I knew I had a grandma who always went to church. So I'm one of those guys who had a praying grandma.
Praying grandma. It's a real thing.
It is a real thing.
I'm telling you right now, it is a real thing.
It really is. And I'm extremely thankful for her and what she was able to kind of just, put those things in my life and expose me to it at my own pace because, especially as teenagers, when I actually started going to church,
Wait, you started going to church as a teenager?
I did.
Okay.
I did. So
that's odd. That's when I was trying to get out of going to church.
No. So here's what happened. Okay. I was your normal high school kid. I was infatuated with girls And so there was this one girl that I really liked, and I knew she went to church. And so I was trying to figure out, some would say scheme. I was trying to scheme a way to get her to go out with me. So I said, hey, so-and-so.
Yeah, don't name drop. Don't let her
I won't
remain.
name drop. Hey, would you like to go to church with me and my grandma this weekend? Because I knew she was heavily involved in her church. And she was like, absolutely.
What kind of church did your grandma go to? What?
It was a Church of God.
Okay. Pentecostal, for these who don't know. Charismatic.
Yeah. And
get ready.
I still don't really know what that means, but like one of my...
That's another episode. We don't need to create that much controversy right now.
No, so, but yeah, no, I want to get in church to impress a girl. And really,
like all people,
yeah.
What?
And one thing happened after another. I
with the girl or with church?
Church.
Okay.
Church.
Okay.
Yeah.
So okay.
Yeah. No, nothing really transpired with the girl, but I'm thankful for that opportunity because I was exposed to church and some of my really the foundation of my church, being in church. It was in that small 100-member church in South Shore, Kentucky.
Wood pews.
Yeah. Yep. My grandma was the greeter.
Yeah.
And so if I had to come, I got
the paper handouts.
Oh,
the fold over paper handouts.
Love them. Yeah. But but that was a great experience for me because when I left Portsmouth and went to Ohio State in 2002, I still kind of had that connection. So when I'd come home for my freshman year, I would still go to church with my grandma on Sundays.
Now, did you go when you were in college?
I didn't go to any place in Columbus, really. Okay. So, I tried a couple places. It was just, it was nothing I was accustomed to. It was a bunch of people my age. And that kind of threw me off, because I'm used to a small church where there's, I'm by far the young, there's a bunch of kids. There's me. There's some early 50-year-olds with their grandkids and a lot of older people. And so that really wasn't my thing. And then my summer going into my sophomore year of college, I met Amanda. And
who's your wife now?
Who is my wife now. And at that point, her parents had just started going to church in Marion. And, I don't know this from personal experience, but just from Amanda, she said that her parents' relationship really transformed. It did like a 180,
Wow.
They were on the verge of divorce and, they went to church and, honestly, it was just like a total transformation of their relationship. So that intrigued my wife. And so my wife started going. She was my girlfriend at the time, or maybe she was my fiance. I'm not really sure, but anyway, so she eventually drugged me in there, and it was definitely the charismatic church that they did a lot of things, and I was like, holy moly, like it's like the things that you didn't know were real in church, they're real.
Yeah, Christianity is such a broad term, or church is such a broad term.
Yeah.
To explain, it's like saying restaurant. Well, where do you want to go eat? Let's go to a restaurant. You know what I mean? Like, hey, do you think we should go to church? There's so many different varieties, which I also think is one of the major misconceptions. Is too often in our life we assume our experience is like somehow reflects everybody's experience because we live in our world.
Yeah.
But we don't really realize or get the exposure to understand. Oh, there's a lot of variety here, and even if you just look around, like even let's say Marion. There's a big variety of that here. So it's interesting that people get into a certain variety and they assume, oh, this is it. Whether it's a positive experience and they assume like that's the only way to do it, or a negative experience and they assume, well, I'm going to reject it because that's what it is, which isn't true.
Yeah.
So you're saying that moment and Amanda watching her parents was a significant turn for her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So now fast forward, 3 kids, careers, busy, typically Monday through Saturday. A lot of Sundays you guys are busy. You're a realtor, so you don't get breaks if somebody wants to see you buy a house or whatever. You got to be flexible with their schedule. So what's the value in going to church now for you?
For me personally, for our family personally, it's going to church is all about the relationships. So it's all about the relationships you have. It's the opportunities that you have to chat with people consistently. Obviously, you can grow those relationships, and it's also really good to have that opportunity to worship together. I can be in the car, or I can I can just listen to a podcast or I can listen to music, and it's not the same, as opposed to when you're with other people. So I take a lot of value in that because mostly when I am at church, there, either my wife's on the worship team, so she's up on stage singing, or like I'm in the back helping kids. So there's not a lot of downtime. Like even when we're at church, we're usually serving. And which I think there's a lot of really good value in that as well. Is it's not about, it should never be about me. It should be about other people and what can I do for other people. And so being able to serve in those roles and also have those opportunities where I can worship and I can and I can have those relationships is really important to me and us and why we go to church.
Yeah, I think there's a maturity transition that you and Amanda had, that being raised in church, you see a lot of people that never really do that. So people leave church over the carpet being a different color, or a song not being sung, or
we had flowers on our
or they weren't recognized, appropriately in the usher, recognition slide that went up on the screen. So they leave the church. But there is that shift of understanding this isn't, at some point in your just adulthood. I'm not talking about anything that's particular to a certain belief system or a certain religious system. I'm talking about at some point your life should not be revolving around yourself. At some point there should be, what's the benefit to, I've made this commitment to my wife. She deserves my best. She deserves my service. She deserves my priority. I can't be the priority anymore. I've decided to, have children and raise these kids. Their benefit has to be that much of a priority for me. So, like with me, like I've been raised in church. It's really hard for me to hear, like to sit in church. Everything kind of functions the same. We've been singing songs, collecting offerings, and hearing somebody preach for, that entire period, or at least my 36 years of life. So for me to walk into church, it's certainly not along the lines of the value I receive from what happens, from the event of church. I also have a lot of great relationships, so I don't necessarily need to go to church to have relationships or a sense of family or belonging, which is also a huge benefit. And like when I was a kid, I never went to church willingly. I was made to go to church up until literally I left the house as a high schooler, or going to college or whatever. And then in college, my attendance was extremely spotty. And when Brittany and I,
like Brown season,
when Brittany and I became, I think, engaged and married, she really re-upped her commitment to be at church. And I didn't really want to. We had a church in Florida that we were going to pretty regularly, and we had friends that we would go with and stuff like that. It was a great church. Nothing against what they were doing or anything. It just, for me, it's like, it was a lot like athletics. I finally was done with that, so I didn't want to work out anymore. I didn't want to go to church anymore. And I guess along the same lines, you can make the connection of, I got out of shape a little bit, kind of spiritually. So we kind of began a journey back along that earlier in our marriage, and then we moved up here, and we actually started. So both of us have spent an extensive amount of time serving and working within a church. But even to fast forward right now, I'll say our church attendance could be better, but I still think, so I read the Bible in my personal time. I pray in my personal time. My relationship with God is the hour or two on Sunday is a very small percentage of it. For a lot of people, that is the bulk of it. But for people that have children, for me, it's significant because I look back over my childhood and I realize the lessons I learned being a part of a local church, having to interact with people that are far different from my age, but also being exposed to that sense or that concept of developing your own morality, your own, true north. There's a book about that, but kind of developing what your beliefs are going to be and what that's going to look like for you. So I think there's a lot of value in it. I think for everybody, there's something to connect to. But obviously we've been filled, you and I both have come across tons of people that don't go.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
For a lot of different reasons. So loaded question. When can somebody not go to church? In your opinion?
When can I not go?
Yeah. When should they not go?
Phil, that's a great question, man. I know why they don't go. Or actually, I know. So, like my mom, for instance, So one thing that she pointed out to me is, church. Some church people are some of the worst people, and that kind of made me think, like, well, obviously, I know she's not talking about me. At least I hope she's not, Mom. But people in church can be the biggest hypocrites and the biggest judges of people outside the church and even inside the church.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of the hardest relationships that I've navigated in my own personal life have been with people at church.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I think that shouldn't be the case. But I think obviously in reality that is the case. And so why should they go to church? I think they should go to church. If you just go for the sheer fact of making yourself better or pushing yourself in a way that's going to make you and everyone around you better, I think that would be one reason why I would encourage people to actually go.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, a difficult relationship is going to teach you something about yourself, and hopefully you can grow from it.
I think there's a lot of value in what you just said, and we live in a culture, or we live in an environment, especially at our age and younger, where if there's a problem, you either remove the problem or you remove yourself. Yeah. It's escapism is what it is.
For sure.
And I think being a bored AF kid in a small little church that really wasn't that cool with nobody else my age, that wasn't that much fun, I had to learn to deal in situations that were challenging. And also some of the struggles and like what happened with my grandpa's church, or even in my middle school years or whatever, some of the exposures or some of the stuff that happened that wasn't positive, it taught me how to deal. And I think my parents definitely did a great job of letting me understand that just because a situation maybe isn't what it should be, doesn't give you the right to escape. And a lot of those times it taught me you have to invest and find a way to contribute, because that's really what it's all about, right? It's not escaping the challenge of where you feel, or the inferiority or the shame or the guilt or the frustration or the anger. It's not about escaping, but it's learning how to deal with that in a healthy, adult, respectful, loving, caring manner. And so to hear you say that, I think it's very accurate, because I think a lot of people, we become more busy, we become more stressed, we just want to escape.
Mm-hmm.
And the second we get into a voluntary situation that doesn't comfort where we're at, it's really hard for us to see past that.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say, maybe it's not church, maybe it's something completely different, but I would say that's also a big part of what has helped us in some successes that we've had, is we've understood it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging, it's going to be, but we also understand how to see through that and see the value.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are multiple other things I could think about doing, on a Sunday morning, spending 3 hours.
Yes, brunch at 1808 every Sunday and just hang out. Yeah.
But there is a lot of value in that, and just getting up and showing up.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing with work and anything we've ever been successful at in our life. Like going to the gym, work, church, friendships. Like those 10 p.m. phone calls you have to go over to friends' houses, chat with them, things like that.
Why are you dropping inside jokes right now?
You just got to show up, man. And so, like learning that, especially demonstrating that to our kids,
mm-hmm.
That's one thing that I want them to know. That was like I didn't fail for the lack of trying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to show up, and for me, showing up is being successful,
mm-hmm.
and demonstrating that I'm willing to make this work. I'm willing to make this try.
Yeah, and we're definitely gonna keep this conversation evolving.
Yeah.
For sure. So there's a lot more to come around this subject, and a lot more questions to come around this subject, because it's something that's a big part of our life.